indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Open comment period. The Transportation Policy Board will allow speakers from the audience to comment on any transportation-related issue that is not on the agenda. During the course of the meeting, audience members will be given the opportunity to discuss each item in the order in which it appears on the agenda after the board has discussed the item. Speakers will be allowed 3 minutes for their comments. No public comment? Okay. So, item number 1. Move the minutes for the January 24th, 2020 TPB meeting. There is a motion and a second to approve the minutes for the January 24th meeting. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so item number 2.
Item number 2 is to amend the Destino 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan and the Destino 2019-2023 Transportation Improvement Program to program additional New Mexico fiscal year 2020 Transportation Alternative Program funds to the Mesa Drive Connectivity Project Design Construction in fiscal year 2020.
Good morning, Greg McNichol, Chairman of the CPAC Committee. There was a call for project. The projects there were 2 that were brought in. You've got the score sheet in your package. One was the Lisa Drive connectivity. The other one was in the Annual project, and the other was the Summit Park project. After scoring the Lisa Drive project scored higher, and we're recommending that one to you for your approval.
Second. Any questions or comments before we go to approval? All right, there's a motion and a second to approve the item as discussed. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is last.
Federal certification review.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Just want to introduce the item here. We have Ms. Genevieve Bales from the Federal Highway Administration. She's going to be presenting or talking a little bit about the federal certification review that they perform along with FTA and other agencies in August of 2018. If you recall, we gave you all a summary of the final report that we received, I guess it was in October of last year. Roger came up and gave you all a brief summary, but here we have the real thing now.
The real thing. I thought Roger did a great job, so.
Good.
So, I'm here to present on the report for the certification review. Y'all have a copy of it in your packet. I'm gonna go over briefly the corrective actions and the recommendations and the best practices or the noteworthy practices that we found when we completed our review.
What about the 2 to the right of the podium? Do I get them or? Okay.
So every 4 years, our office, along with FTA, review and evaluate your metropolitan planning organization. This is your TxDOT, the EPMPO, and the transit operator for the region to make sure that they're still following all the requirements and meeting our expectations to continue to operate as the metropolitan planning organization. We held our on-site review in August 2018. So these are some of the topics we talked about. We talked about the FAST Act compliance, how the MPO was complying with the FAST Act. We looked into the freight planning, security, ITS. We talked about air quality for both El Paso and El Paso. This region includes New Mexico. Public involvement, the MPO is doing a lot of dynamic public involvement outreach efforts to reach out to the community. The congestion management process definitely was a subject of discussion along with your TIP, your MTP. Basically, all of your federal requirements, we went through those with the MPO and kind of gave feedback on how they're doing, if they're doing a great job, or you guys had a lot of noteworthy practices too that we wanted to make sure we captured. So regional planning, that was something that we talked about. At the time, there was a lot of maybe not working together, and we recommended that the MPO work to help coordinate the board and have everybody look towards a regional planning focus and less of a individual, this is my project, why aren't we funding my project type of focus. Rural transit, this was talking about maybe making sure that you have a venue or an opportunity to have some meaningful input from your rural transit operator and see how those transit services are all coordinated. We heard from several of your transit operators, Sun Metro, is it South Central?
Regional transit.
El Paso County. But it looked like Sun Metro was the only one with a voice at the table, so we wanted to make sure that everybody was communicating, and we wanted to make sure that everybody was being heard. For the formalized and increased communication, this was talking about the MPOs formalizing and increasing communication between the MPOs, staff, and the MPO boards, maybe with Mesilla Valley MPO. Because they're operating under some of your urbanized area, and so you guys have to make sure you continue that coordination effort. FAST compliance, y'all are doing a lot of great things with FAST compliance, but you didn't document it all. So that was one of the recommendations, to make sure that you're capturing all of those efforts and documenting how you're being compliant with the FAST Act. The three-way agreements was talking about the three-way agreements between the state and the MPO and the transit operator, moving forward with your plan and how to address performance measures and make sure that you meet those expectations. So one of the corrective actions we found at the time of the review was that the CMP was not fully operational. It wasn't used to identify projects for your MTP and your TIP. And so we asked that you revise the CMP, which you all have, and you make sure that there's adequate data collection and you apply the CMP. And that was a point of discussion this week. We talked about how the CMP has been applied to your MTP, how that prioritizes the projects for your planning efforts for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, your long-range plan, and your Transportation Improvement Program, your short-range plan. We want to make sure that since this is a non-attainment area, that the CMP is used to prioritize those projects and it has enough data collection effort involved with this. The other corrective action, and this was noted at the time of the review, was the MOUs were not in place with the state of Texas and the state of New Mexico, and that's something that was resolved. But at the time of the review, it was something that was a corrective action, so we still had to note it as a corrective action. But I think they were met in October of 2018. So, you had a lot of outstanding practices too. Your training for your board members here is something that you don't see often in a lot of the different MPO areas, especially tying it to voting, so you guys are very informed. The knowledgeable voting members of the board, your MPO staff is doing a great job of keeping you informed and keeping you updated on what's going on and how your decisions are influencing the planning process. The other best practice was your project readiness report. That was very great transparency for what you guys are, what you have in the TIP, what you're moving forward with, and how those projects are, getting implemented or why they're not getting implemented. You have a lot of good information there, and I heard that you're going to electronic format to update those projects so it's even more transparent. So I thought that was even better. And that's something definitely that we're going to have the MPO staff share. I think nationally we're going to have them maybe start sharing their project readiness report, because that's something that a lot of MPOs struggle with. Just they program their projects in the TIP, but they don't have reports on those projects moving forward and being implemented, and that's something that you guys are doing a good job with. So the transportation command model, your model was improved and had a lot of different tools that you could use. Scenario planning, you had different modes in there, and it was just a great effort. Public transportation, FTA noted that it was a seamless public transportation between Submetro and the county. I think there was one pass or one fare that was being used, and so FTA noted that the public transportation was a notable strength too. Public involvement, you're on YouTube, you're online, you're on Facebook, your outreach to all the different areas. I think the MPO is really making sure that they're reaching out to everybody and making sure that everyone's voice is being heard. They're responding to comments. I think we had some recommendations for just like following up with that and making sure you're evaluating it to see what works and what doesn't work. That they're already doing that, but they need to document that they're evaluating it. So they're doing a great job with that. The air quality was how they handled the air quality conformity issue with New Mexico. I think there was no guidance for them necessarily to follow, so they came up with what they thought would work best, and they worked with our federal highway air quality folks and moved forward, and they did a great job with that. So we jointly certified that the MPO met requirements substantially subject to the implementation of the CMP by March 2020, and this is something we talked with Eduardo and Roger with this week, and we talked to them about just documenting how you use the CMP to identify and select projects with your 2020 RMS, and how those are influencing what's in the MCP, what's in the TIP, and just making sure that that's very clear and transparent. And I'm Genevieve. Ronisha Hodge is the planner that was taking over at FTA. I think that she's still your point of contact for FTA. And Rodolfo is New Mexico point of contact for FHWA. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
It says here the MPO should provide progress reports to FHWA through the text every month, but this ends March 1st, 2020, by the way.
This was just if they didn't have the CMP adopted and updated, and we're working with them to see how they've updated it.
Sure. Can I just say a couple of things? If you recall, the certification review was performed in August of 2018. Since, as a result of that, we've got to give a lot of credit to Roger and the MPO staff. They immediately jumped at the two correction actions that were identified, the CMP and the agreements. The staff jumped at it immediately to start the process, and the CMP took a little bit of time, but if you remember, that was approved by the board or adopted by the board in November. And we used the CMP as one of the criteria, one of the inputs to evaluate and prioritize a project that made it to the 2020 RMS. So, we're using all that. The other corrective action, which is the agreements, immediately again staff jumped on it, and we got those executed on time. So again, kudos to Roger and the staff at the time. We jumped on it immediately right after. And I think we feel pretty good. Obviously, there's a lot of room for improvement, a lot of stuff that we need to work on, like the public involvement and improve, many things. But I think we're on the right track. We feel good.
I think staff is very responsive when we have a recommendation or we know something. They're very responsive to us, and like Eduardo said, Roger and staff immediately started making notes after our meeting. I think they even started implementing some of the recommendations. So we really appreciate that. But they're doing a great job, so you should definitely note that too.
The other thing that was noted, the quarterly project form that we go through evaluating the projects, and especially when it goes through TPAC, that is sometimes a painful process because, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is make sure that every project gets is moving, appropriately and makes the letting on time. So sometimes it's not a very pretty process, but it works. It really, really does work. So we really appreciate the help of all the agencies, especially at the TPAC level, where the sausage is made, but it works.
Thank you, Ms. Bales, for making the trip, and thank you to staff, to Roger, and to Mario.
I did have a question. You said you were considering making this project readiness report.
I can't hear you very good, sorry.
Sorry, you're considering making or exporting this project readiness report process.
Well, we're going to be talking with the EPMPO, and I think we noted it at the time of the review that we would like them to share it as a best practice. Because this is something that definitely a lot of the other MPOs across the nation could benefit from, is just having that transparency and the detail behind the project readiness.
So is there any
We forgot.
quid pro quo in that? Is that worth something to us?
Good job.
Sorry.
Considering putting it up online.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Road diet.
Again, Mr. Chair, just to introduce here, it was also a federal highway. Road diets is an item that is getting a little more attention here, and Ed is going to explain, but especially the city of El Paso has been very active in implementing projects that include road diets. It's a way of it has to do with, in some cases, reducing capacity for vehicles, but instead of that, putting the bike lanes and other facilities as well. So we thought it was very timely for him to come in and give a talk about that. That's it.
Good morning, my name is Ed Bullos. I work for Federal Highway Administration. I'm a safety engineer, Austin, Texas. And like Eduardo said here, I'm going to be talking today about road diets. We've seen that El Paso is trying to do more road diet projects in the near future. So we thought it was a very good timing to maybe get a little bit more explanation of what are road diets and their benefits. So, what is a road diet? So a road diet is a transportation planning technique that basically repositions the paper markings to meet the need for other users. When we talk about road diets, what we're basically saying is that we're gonna reduce the lane width to accommodate for either parking, it can be bike lanes, it can be a two-way left turn lane. There's been like a debate on the road diet name, so many agencies have changed the name, and they call them lane conversions, lane reconfiguration, lane narrowings, and others. For example, City of Austin, they call them right-sizing projects. So on the image on the screen, you can see the before configuration, and that is your typical 4-lane undivided highway. So after the road diet, you can see on the lower right picture that one lane has been eliminated. So you have your 2-lane roadway with a 2-way left turn lane in the middle. That is your usual configuration, but there's many other roadway configurations. You have your 4-lane, 5-lane. This might be done when the agency just they want to reduce left turns from the travel lane. So they just narrow the lane width of the 4 lanes and just add the 2-way left turn in the middle. And you can see you can go from 2 to 3, then the 3 to 3. On the 3 to 3, what they did is just reduce the lane width of the lanes have space for more shoulders. And then obviously the 5 to 3 where they added parking and bike lanes too. So there's many benefits that we improve that we can achieve by implementing road diets. There's benefit, first there's benefit for the drivers. Why? They separate the left turning vehicles by providing a two-way left turn lane. You provide a traffic flow uninterrupted because you accommodate the left turns on that two-way left turn lane. You can also improve side traffic ability to cross. If you see on the image on the center, you can see that before you had 8 point of conflict, but when you implement a road diet, you have just 4 point of conflicts. And it also improved the sight distance for anybody that's making the left turn lanes. But when we were talking about what it is a road diet, we talk about other users. So not the benefit is not only for the drivers. So there's benefits also for the pedestrian, the bicyclists, and the tricycle riders. So for example, for the pedestrian, well, you're taking out lanes, so you reduce the crossing distance for these pedestrians. By adding parking and bike lanes, you can also buffer the sidewalks from the travel lanes. And what it basically is that you're reclaiming street space for higher and better use than just moving a peak hour traffic that you will see probably just 1 or 2 times a day. Like I said, there's a reduction on potential crash points, and one of the biggest benefits of the road diet is that it reduces the speed differential between stopped vehicles and vehicles that are traveling. So this produces a more calm traffic. You can also improve emergency response, so emergency vehicles can travel uninterrupted just using the two-way left turn lane. And by many case studies that have been studied, we can see that the number of crashes can be reduced by 19 to 47%. And this is just a range. We've seen greater than 47% reduction in crashes. So when I talk about reducing crash types, so you get to reduce the rear enders, you get to reduce the side swipes, and you get reduce also the left turn crashes. So what do other agencies use to know if a road is a very good candidate for a road diet? So this range of ADT, they come from Seattle DOT. Seattle DOT are considered like the pioneers on doing road diets. So by doing so many road diets on the roadways, they consider that if the road has less than 10,000 average daily traffic, then it's a great candidate for a road diet, and you don't need to do a lot of analysis. For the 10,000 to 15,000 range, it is recommended that the agencies conduct a intersection analysis. For 15 to 20,000, then you need to do a more in-depth analysis of the whole corridor. And greater than 20,000, it's not that you cannot do it, but you need to do a more in-depth analysis. And you can, as you can read at the bottom, there are examples across the country where road diets have been successful with ADTs higher than 26,000 feet. So let's go to some case studies. So in Arizona, this was a 1 mile run with 4 travel lanes. The reason they decided to do it is because they were having a lot of pedestrian crashes. So these roads, they had street parking, and cars were parking on the sidewalk. So they were walking the pedestrian walkway. So pedestrians jumping into the travel lanes, and that's where the crashes happened. So after the restriping on the study period, there were no crashes with pedestrian and bicycles, and there was a total reduction on 7% of the total crashes. And there was also a 5% decrease in the observed speed of that roadway. Here's another example for all event. They observed a 34 crash rate reduction. There was also a reduction on speed. There was more activity, more bike and ped activity, more on-street parking utilization, and they also saw a property values. The property values also increased. So let's see a statewide, like a state example of a road diet. So Austin, they've been doing road diets since probably like 1994, 1996. After doing so many road diets, they developed this report that they call road cycling. But if we talk about this project, they saw a 29% crash reduction. Why they decided to do a road diet on this road is that they also saw a lot of pedestrian crashes because pedestrians were trying to cross the road. After the road diet, they saw that first, before that, this is Cameron Road, and Cameron Road is the speed limit is 35 miles per hour for the northern part and 30 miles per hour for the southern part. So after the road diet, they saw that the number of vehicles that travel more than 45 miles per hour, it was reduced from 175 to 22 vehicles in a 24-hour study period. And vehicles traveling more than 55, it was reduced from 23 to 0 in that 24-hour period. So what Austin did is that when they were looking at the flow chart that Seattle DOT uses, if you remember, I showed you how they use anything below 10,000 ADT is like very good to go, and they do very little analysis. But Austin, after they sit down and they saw about the 30-something projects they did, most of the projects will not require a analysis, so they kind of dropped that lower range to 7,500 ADT. So they developed their own kind of methodology, and they have a very good report that is called. It is on the screen. It's called Redesigning the Street, Right-Sizing Projects. And like I said, this is what City of Austin calls the road diets. So, El Paso is planning to do more road diets. Federal Highway is eager to help and offer their resources. We have many resources online. The road diet informational guide that is online, that's like the go-to guide. Well, we also have a report on case study. There's more than 10 or 15 case studies. We also have a 1 or 2 pager that is called Road Diet Mythbusters. And this is very good for public outreach. It's just your basic question. Like I said, it's very good to have on hand when you're discussing with the public. We also have a very good document that talks about what other agencies have established on their policies to institute road diets on their roads. So that was the end of my presentation. My contact info is on the screen. I'm the state point of contact for El Paso. I'm not subject matter expert on road diet. That is Baby Pro. I'll be happy to give you guys in the right direction on discussing road diets with Baby Pro, and with also discuss about the opportunity of bringing a one-day workshop to El Paso to discuss road diets. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask a couple of questions and make a comment? So, I mean, clearly road diets have safety as one of the main objectives, right? You know, the reduction in incidents between vehicles and pedestrians and all that. So clearly, I think that one of the messages here is that when agencies propose projects that include road diets, we've got to make sure that we support with safety information. In other words, how is a project going to potentially reduce the number of incidents and all that? I mean, safety obviously is a one of the most important goals for all of us. And if you recall the discussion that we had here at the policy board when we were adopting the safety targets that the EPMPO adopted statewide, I mean, safety and especially incidents that involve pedestrian fatalities are tremendously high. So, I mean, this is a really good thing to look at, but think of it not so much when we do a road diet, not so much on the recreational side because we're putting bike lanes or bike paths, but it's more on the safety. That's my comment. But the second thing is, can you talk a little bit about, you know, the road diets are not, you know, they don't work in every situation, right? I mean, clearly there is also a trade-off between a road diet and for safety purposes versus congestion, right? Because you are taking a travel lane away.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so most of these cities are planned using the link and node nodes. It's been talked through a study through the years that if you have a corridor, mainly your capacity is determined not by the travel lanes, it's mostly by your intersections. There are some trade-offs, yes, but I believe it's worth just studying and analyzing each project very carefully. It's not just saying, yeah, let's do a road diet because we think we just want to add bike lanes. No, it's a process that needs to be thought through. And for example, when I was talking about the crash diet, this is something very important. You want to see that if you want to reduce, for example, pedestrian fatalities or severe injuries with pedestrian bicycles, you need to see that the countermeasure you're putting in on your roadway will attack that type of crashes. So you guys need to look at your crash data and see what are the type of crashes that are occurring on your roadways.
Mr. Chair, can you talk a little bit about the environmental process for road diets? You know, how does this affect our conformity? How does this affect our capacity? How does this affect all the documents that we have to submit as part of the MPO when we're going to go from 4 lanes to 3 lanes? What process, what type of, you know, is it a category of exclusion? Is it a, you know, a full EIS? What is it?
So I'm sorry, but I'm not very familiar with the environmental process on road diets. It's just restriping. I want to say it's very small, the environmental impact. But I can get back to you on that. Definitely, yes.
If I may, there are two things to consider when we talk about environmental. The NEPA document is based on what we're doing on the project. The NEPA document is not necessarily just based on the road diet. Now, if that is the only thing you're going to do, which implies, you know, restriping, but there's no right of way, there's no other impacts, you know, these projects could go with a categorical exclusion, very simple. The question that we've been having is more related to conformity, because you are taking a lane away, right? So our understanding, and you know, we've been talking to Genevieve and the rest of the federal highway team. Road diets in general are considered exempt projects from conformity, right? But again, you need to justify why you're doing it. If you're saying that you're doing it for safety purposes, well, then you need to provide the backup. You know, well, show me, right? But so the question is on conformity, and that's what we're working with right now. Typically, they're considered exempt projects, but since this is really the first step that has an issue with conformity, we're making sure that you know we understand what the process is.
You know, we've got a problem in El Paso with too many pedestrian deaths and too many automobile crashes with fatalities. How do we look at this? Is this an MPO problem for us to look at that and where we might want to do road diets to counteract that, or is this a city problem, or is this where does all this fit? We gotta do something.
Right. I think it's everybody's problem. I mean, we all have a responsibility to look at this. I mean, procedurally, the MPO has to, as part of the performance-based planning, we have to adopt the safety targets and show that we're, you know, moving forward with that. But also the implementing agencies, whether it's TxDOT or the municipalities, you know, the agencies that are responsible for putting projects out. I mean, it is, you know, also your responsibility. So, you know, the MPO will do our part, which in terms of taking the lead and analyzing, you know, where the hot spots are, perhaps for, you know, recurring incidents. But yeah, I mean, it's everybody's problem.
So where do we start?
So here's where we started, sir. Just so for everybody's information, we have an inside committee that includes police, includes the traffic engineers, includes our CIT people that are looking at hotspots. We collect information from TxDOT or from city records, and we identify the locations, not just for pedestrians, but pedestrians, bicycles, and vehicles where we have in collisions. Then we look at, you know, opportunities for what can be improved. So we do look at education, engineering, and enforcement. So we have to use all three approaches to it. We have to educate our public on the problems that are being created by drinking and driving, or even walking intoxicated and crossing the street from places that are not appropriate. We look at lighting projects. We look at reduction of, you know, road diets, you know, where we put in medians, you know, to make it easy for a pedestrian to cross. We put in, you know, traffic control devices to regulate the traffic a little bit more. We look at speeds, and we work with our, you know, our counterpart from TxDOT to find solutions that are approvable by both TxDOT corridors. So, but the education component is very, very important to us, because we need the public to help us. You know, they need to realize that they can be speeding on a school zone. They can be going 45 miles and a 30 mile per hour. There's a reason why we restrict the speed limit. And the enforcement is, you know, to remind those people that refuse to play by the rules that everybody else plays, you know, to bring them into compliance.
So where we are addressing, as you're saying, the pedestrian fatalities, and I know about, we got a lot of DUIs, et cetera.
Yes, sir.
We might want to, once some data's collected, have a presentation.
Yes, sir. It's coming to the council.
Okay, all right.
Can I make some comments
Yeah.
on that? I think it is everyone's problems to reduce fatalities on the roadway. We have an internal fatality review team. We meet every month internally to discuss every fatality that occurs on system roadways. When you look at something like this, you got to look at it as another tool in your toolbox. I've done several road diet projects. Extremely effective on roadways where the traffic characteristics have changed. Maybe a big traffic generator has moved, so capacity is no longer an issue, but you still have a lot of intersection. You have a high intersection density, and intersection density meaning driveways. It's extremely effective in the fact that you reduce the number of conflict points when somebody wants to make a left turn. No longer do you have 4 lanes you have to navigate. It's essentially one. So your number of conflict points when making a left turn movement is reduced. That's one thing you kind of didn't mention. But that's when they're extremely effective, when your traffic patterns have changed. Capacity may not be the issue anymore. It's more of a speed change differential, intersection density issue. So that's when these projects are extremely effective. So look at it as a tool, not necessarily a cure.
I just want to make sure we're doing some. I and the rest of the council members receive daily the reports on the number of when an accident occurs, why it occurred, fatalities, et cetera. And we're way above. It's just increasing at too rapid a pace not to have something being done. So I think we would agree we'd like to have some information on where we are on this. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Item number 5, the regional mobility strategy.
Good morning. Eduardo Calvo, Executive Director of EPMPO.
So we're going to be giving you monthly reports on where we are on RMS 2020, the Official Mobility Strategy. And by the way, this is the first time that we use the format with RMS. The mission statement that we presented to you last time, again, emphasizing that we're one region, one voice, one strategy. All right, so we're going to talk about the key meetings that have happened since the last time we met. We're also going to present to you what TxDOT staff presented to the Texas Transportation Commission last month in terms of the development of the fiscal year 21 Unified Transportation Program. And then we'll talk about the next steps. So we had two very important meetings last month toward the end of January. Representative Lena Ortega and I met with, first of all, with Mark Williams. He's the number 2 guy at TxDOT, the Deputy Executive Director. And basically what we did is we presented the RMS 2020 plan, the big spreadsheet with all the projects and how we're proposing to move the funding around and accelerating a lot of the project work for the local governments. Again, he thought it was a great idea. As we know, the concept of prioritizing projects, not asking for everything, but show that we're prioritizing, and the fact that there was consensus in the adoption. So those two are the key words that we're hammering: prioritization and consensus. He said, great timing that you're here in January. Because as you know, the UTP is being put together now. And our response was, well, it's not a coincidence that we're here in January. I mean, we know, we've been talking about synchronizing our local RMS 2020 plan with the development of the UTP. We know that now January through March is a critical time for us to be out there, because really that's when TxDOT is putting funding and projects together. So if we're going to be asking and making sure that our needs are known, this is the time to do it, and we'll talk a little bit about that. One of the key comments that we got from Mark is the last bullet: local skin in the game. Of course, with all the qualifiers, he said, I cannot speak for the commission, but I know that the commission looks very favorably in terms of selecting projects that receive discretionary funding. They look at very favorably when there is local skin in the game, and by that it's money coming in from the local governments, or maybe some of the allocations that come to the region through the formula categories, like perhaps Category 2, Category 7. So he's basically saying, where is the local skin in the game? So that's a very important thing to consider. It was a short meeting, great meeting. Then the following day, Representative Ortega and I attended the commission meeting in January, and Representative Ortega made comments first. As you all know, the commission allows the elected officials to go first, make some comments, and he spoke very, very eloquently about our priority projects, speaking about I-10 Segment 2, which is really, as we all know, the number 1 priority in terms of the importance of I-10 for us. And then I made several remarks following the public comment period after the UTP item, and again hammering the same thing. We have consensus. We are prioritizing, but we need help. We definitely need help. These are very expensive projects, and even if we put all of our money, our formula money, into the I-10 project or the Borderland Expressway, I know that it's not enough. And as part of that meeting is TxDOT staff presented the outlook for the fiscal year 21 UTP. And what they did in January is that they looked at the funding side. This is the money side. Okay, they're saying, well, the money people, the finance division, they came up with their cash forecast for the next 10 years and so on. And so they were presenting this to the committee. To the commission. I'm not going to go through all the slides, but again, the UTP, putting it into perspective, it's a 10-year plan, where it fits in the middle between all the other planning programs. As part of the process, right now, like I said, they were determining the cash, the funding side of the equation without talking about projects yet. Where they are in the process, the fiscal year 21 UTP development started back in September, and the goal is to present the final version of the 21 UTP to the Commission in August. So in between, you see there the different activities that go on. All right, so without again getting into a lot of the weeds, Proposition 1, Proposition 7 are very important funding sources that are putting money into the UTP in general. There is some ups and downs. As you know, Prop 1 has to do with taxes or revenues coming in from gas and oil. Prop 7 comes in from sales tax. The not very good news is that compared to the current UTP, which is a fiscal year 20 UTP, they're expecting about a $3.5 billion shortage, or a reduction from 20 to fiscal year 21. Several reasons there. The TERP program. Again, not getting into the weeds, but the bottom line is that there's going to be, the expectation is that there's going to be a little bit less. $3.5 billion sounds like a lot, but it's about 4% in the bigger context of the UTP. And what staff was proposing to the Commission is how to distribute the overall dollar amount, how to distribute that between the 12 funding categories that are included in the UTP. Some of these categories include the federal categories, which they can't do much about that. They have to be funded at that level. But I think that the biggest discussion that they had was really the where to reduce or where to put that reduction, the expected reduction in funding. Whether to reduce it from the formula categories, like Category 2, which are distributed to all the districts based on formulas, or put the reduction in Category 12, which is the discretionary category, where the Commission has a lot more latitude in selecting projects. At the time of that meeting is a very interesting discussion, watching the commissioners, express difference of opinions. But it's very significant in terms of how it affects us. Again, they were looking at moving money from Category 12 into the safety category. So instead of adding $600 million like they did last year, they're going to be adding a little bit less. So to handle that. Now there was some discussion on why are you putting less money into the safety category, which is again one of the philosophical discussions that they were having. Again, these are just more and more details on comparing 20 and 21. Looking at also at the TxDOT also has to go with their performance measures, so they need to address and follow the targets for safety, for paving condition, and so on.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question? Going back to, Mr. Calvo, to your statement that you made about this shifting in fundings as a result of the reduction, you stated that there was some discussion, or not that there was some discussion, but how this might affect us. Can you elaborate on that? Do you have some insight for us into what this is going to mean for us and our projects?
Right. So again, this is very preliminary in January, but the real question is, if they reduce the categories that are based on formulas like Category 2, then we would get a little bit less money. The El Paso district would get a little bit less money. If you put the reduction on Category 12, which is the discretionary piece, then there is less money for the commissioners to pick projects, right? So,
but that gives the commissioners, if they put money in discretionary number 12, that gives them more authority, if you will, to decide on their own where they want to put the money. Is that correct?
Right. Well, let me put it this way: if you're on the right side, right?
Yes.
then yeah. But if you're not on the right side, then you know, there's a potential for us to get less money here in the regions of Category 2, and more opportunity for them to pick projects outside of El Paso,
Right.
Which is really the biggest concerns that we have right now. Well, I was going to talk about that later, but
Okay.
but let me just
Thank
say
you, Mr.
the
Chairman.
emphasis at the state level on I-35, the main corridor, the emphasis on the metro areas, you know, through the Clear Lanes initiative and so on. But well, let's save that for the next
All
item.
right. Thank you.
But I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did.
Just, you had mentioned the turf in last session. We offered riders in the budget to fully fund turf. As you know, turf is not fully funded. And the turf funds at the state level have been utilized to fund other things in the budget. So I think it's important to know, I think as we revisit with the TxDOT commission, before the members of the commissioner, that we need to stress that these funds aren't diverted to other things in the budget, that we continue to focus and make that push specifically for turf, so that it doesn't impact us negatively down the road. So, but I think the participation at the TCC is important to let them know that, and our budget, right?
Exactly right. So again, this presentation was made in late January. So now, almost a month later, you know, the commission is scheduled to meet next week. So where are they going to be? So I believe that in the presentation in next week's meeting, staff are going to start, you know, presenting how they're going to be matching projects to the available funding on the different categories. So that's why it is very important for us to show up again at the commission meeting next week. I know that several, you know, the state delegation hopefully will be able to make it out there, and how important it is for El Paso to be out there. And again, using the you know, what we heard yesterday at the event that the Texas Tribune put together. You know, it is very clear that we need to go out there and talk about El Paso. You said it many times, Mayor. I mean, I totally agree. So we have to be there. We have to show up. We have to tell them that we're out here. Part of what I mentioned to the commissioners and that I've said many times is that there's such a focus right now on I-35. And our problem is that, you know, not only are we not on I-35, but we're on the wrong side of I-35, right? Because the focus is 35 with San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, but then Houston, which is on the east side. We're on the west side, 550 miles away. So, you know, we're really, really far away. So that's an obvious, you know, natural challenge and disadvantage that we have. Well, that's why we have to be there and show up. So hopefully there will be, you know, several of you all, and I'll be there too, and making sure that they know that we're here and that we're asking for their help. We're doing our part as far as prioritizing and showing that you know, that we have consensus, but we definitely need help. And again, the biggest argument that we're making is that, yeah, I mean, I-35 is a very important corridor, but so is I-10. Not just for us here locally, but for the state and as a national corridor, especially for freight.
What's the reason the delay on the resolution of support from the city? Is that just, you know, what the problem is?
I don't think so. I think, you know, we were talking.
There be any problem?
No.
Okay.
No. There's no problem. We have. I mean, it's very important for us to, when we prepare a package, that we show the support from everybody. So we've been asking for resolutions of support. So I am not
I haven't
aware of
seen any
any.
in my office. It's supposed to come in my office. I haven't seen anything, so I just need to know what we need to do.
You'll see it next week.
Okay.
All right, so those are the resolutions of support that we need, and as you all know, we're looking at all the individual projects that are part of the plan to make sure that they're moving forward. Right now, we're in the painful stage of coming up with agreements, and in some cases, you know, who's doing what. In some cases, the RMA may be involved in helping the local governments and moving the projects together and moving them forward, with some of the development activities. So our plan is to come here every month and present a report to you all and how we are moving. So far so good, but we're only in the second month of the plan. And with that, do you have any more questions? Happy to answer.
Talking about the regional mobility strategy, the top 5 projects, I mean, it was my understanding that we're pushing those all as top priorities, all 5, right? They aren't necessarily ranked in a particular order. Is that true, or is it?
No, I think we all agree that that I-10 segment 2, the piece downtown, is a priority project in the sense that the urgency that we have to rebuild it, regardless of the other stuff that is talked about that goes along with that project, which is really good. But I think we recognize that if we don't rebuild I-10 through the downtown section, it's going to be, a very, very bad situation for us. Again, I don't know, Tomas, if you want to elaborate on that. But as far as the priorities, yeah, that clearly is a priority. Now, because that project is in development now, and it's going to take several years going through the environmental document, the schematic, looking at different alternatives and all that. There are other projects like the Borderland Expressway, which is the former Northeast Parkway, that supports the I-10 corridor, right? So these are not that independent projects per se. What we're saying is that the Borderland Expressway is a very important project that supports the I-10 corridor as well, providing a bypass to avoid, for those that really don't have any business coming into El Paso. So the way that we've communicated that is that those are the top 2 projects. Segment 3, which is for I-10, which is pretty much from Copia to Airway, that project is easier to handle. Not that it's a much lower priority, but I think we can still work with TxDOT and break that into smaller pieces. You can do different pieces of the puzzle that don't require so much money. So I think it's easier to manage those into pieces. The problem with segment 2 is the downtown piece, and again, I don't want to speak for TxDOT, but it's the problem that we have is that we have to build it all at once. I think you guys have been looking at finding ways of maybe breaking it into pieces so that it's you can start with something. But my understanding is that so far it's going to be a challenge.
It is the fact that you have a lane balance problem on the main lane, then you have discontinuous frontage roads, makes it incredibly difficult to build. And then your intersection density for the cross streets is pretty close. You don't have the separation that you do further down on I-10. Causes us construction issues, so it kind of lends itself to be done out once. And not in phases like we would prefer.
All right. Thank you.
Item number 6, amendment to the Vecino 2045 the amendment of the new 2021-2024 budget and contribution to conformity report.
Good morning, I'm Roger Williams with the El Paso NPO. I'm giving you an update on where we're at with the development of the amendments to our long-range transportation plan. We had a consultation call yesterday with our partners. We're on track. The next phase is we're moving into the development of the conformity report. As you know, the long-range plan is impacted by capacity projects that require us to go through that process. So on this schedule here, you can see where we're at right now in developing. The next step is develop the emissions analyses for the conformity report. We'll be bringing that into the document from those emissions results, and we'll bring that document forward to you next month, along with the projects. You have a project list in your packet. You can see the entire list. We have highway projects, and in that list, you see all the projects that are currently in the plan right now, and highlighted are the projects that are being amended. We have amendments to several projects that require us to move the projects around within the model for development of the new conformity. And along with this, we'll also have a new transportation improvement program, so that's a short-range program that goes along with it. All of that will come back to you for your recommendation to move forward for public involvement. We'll do the public involvement in the April timeframe, and when we come back to you in May, we'll have any comments that were received from the public, and we'll then ask for your recommendations moving forward. We then submit that through the federal process to get it approved for conformity. The entire process should play out within the time frame of this fiscal year, so that with the development of the new transportation improvement program, which starts with the new fiscal year, we hope to have the conformity for this amendment and all the projects that then are able to let move forward as they need to. So that's pretty much it. You've seen this process has been going on for several months now. The main point that I would like to make here is that we are on track, and we expect to go ahead and move forward as planned. So if you have to answer any questions, Mike.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions. I noticed we have a couple of other I-10 widening projects apart from the downtown widening project, and the others were slated for 2030, and the I-10 downtown 2030 in the 2045 plan, and the I-10 widening downtown is now, I see, listed for 2040. So there seems to have been a jump on those projects. Is that because of our designating the I-10 widening as a priority project, or what are the reasons? What's the reason for the jump?
The I-10 widening project that you're referring to is still in the plan as it was already when we put it in the 2030 network. It basically incorporates that project, that the priority project that we were talking about in the RMS. Although the project itself needs to be looked at in greater detail as to what actually is going to happen as it goes through the environmental process. Mm-hmm. So it's still in the plan accordingly. Now, if we were to be able to receive funds for that, then we would be moving forward with implementing that project. Although it still needs to go through the whole process, there's a lot of work to be done on that before we actually know what that project looks like.
Okay, and my second question is, I noticed the total projected cost is $635 million. I thought we had talked about this project a while back as a $1.2 billion project. Is the difference that's missing from this number the potential cost for the park that would be built, that was proposed as?
No, that's not part of the cost that you see here. What the cost that's in the plan right now is lower than what we expect, and it all depends on what that project turns out to look like. Mm-hmm. But this was preliminary. When we started putting this plan together over 2 years ago, this was the estimate that we had at that time. So then, that's gone through a lot of changes with the Reimagine I-10 study, and we're getting more up-to-date information and what we expect that project to really cost as we move into the future.
All right, thank you.
Questions? Thank you.
Item 7, El Paso MPO Title
Morning, Brian Miskman, El Paso MPO. The Title VI program is required by the MPO because we are direct recipients of 5310. We're bringing it to you today because we had to update a couple items. The items that we updated was the Title VI policy statement translated into Spanish, the organizational chart, and the Title VI coordinator identified in our document. This document is required every 3 years, and it's going to expire next year, which we'll review when that we're
8, Executive Director's Report.
Eduardo Cato again with Pasco and Field. You see three items that I wanted to bring up to your attention. First of all, the Texas Transportation Forum. That's the annual conference that Texas has been putting together for 11, 12 years now. It's a really cool conference, more high level, talking more about policy. And several of you attended. I know last week you were there, Senator, you were there, Representative Ortega was there as well. Great conference, talking about trade, talking about funding, talking about all those things. But if you allow me to get into the soapbox. It was a day and a half of really good conversations at the state level and all that, but after a day and a half, there was only one reference to El Paso. I mean, again, it's all about the I-35 corridor, it's talking about trade, especially, in binational trade. The city of Laredo is getting a lot of attention. Even the mayor of the city of Laredo, Pete Saenz, is a really good guy. Well, Texas gave him an award, the Good Hands Award, which is, an award that they give to stakeholders that are very active in transportation. Again, the guy really deserves it. He's a really good guy. But part of the reason why he gets the award is that he shows up. He's a member of the Border Trade Advisory Committee. He's a member of the Trade Advisory Committee. He shows up to everything. Why? Because he knows that the bridges are the lifeline of Fort Laredo. So the guy shows up. And in our case, there was several people there attending the forum, but again, these are the opportunities, like I was saying before, that we have to show up. If we don't, then when we don't get the attention or funding, part of it is our problem because we're not there. So we've got to make a lot of noise. I'll get off my soapbox. The next, the TPB Members Continuous Education Program. As you know, the deadline to submit your hours and all that was in January. For those that are still missing, we've already talked about that. So again, the problem there is having your voting rights delayed until you complete that. So just wanted to make sure that you were aware.
Mr. Chair, on those meetings, and this would probably be a question for the attorney, but how does the loss of voting privileges affect quorum?
Do you want to answer?
Sure. It actually does not affect quorum.
Okay.
If you show up to the meeting and you've lost your voting rights, you still count towards the overall quorum.
Okay.
You just can't vote.
Okay, that's important.
Or put motions or second.
Correct. Right. So but your presence is noted for purposes of quorum.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair. And Eduardo, just want to comment. A lot of times during our board meetings, we have presentations that are done that are informational of what, like your RMS strategy. That's important for all of us to know. Couldn't that be part of some continuing education thing where you guys get, we get 30 minutes of training? Because during the board meeting, we actually had a presentation that could have easily been done before the meeting and count as training. But during the meeting, sometimes we have these informational presentations that should count towards that training.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we actually can look at that, try to help and see, from the start of the fiscal year, which is October, if there were any presentations that could count towards that. Again, part of it is, it has to be like a full hour, right, technically. But even though, we try to make them as short as possible to, yes, comply with the requirement. The other thing is that I don't know if you want me here standing in front of you talking for an hour. But that is one of the ideas that we're looking at. Perhaps using some of these presentations, maybe make them a little bit longer, but with the advantage of counting towards training.
My turn.
As for 30 minutes, they are 30-minute sessions too, because when I went and I started doing mine, there are sessions for 30 minutes as well. So, I mean, we could consider it because the gentleman is correct, you know, I mean, they're informative, they're educational. I mean, I think that it should count. Some of us don't have the ability or the time to do this on our own sometimes. And when it comes down to it, crunch time, you know, I had very difficulty, like 3 days to get in, to log in, so that I can do my hour that I did do it, guys, but what I'm saying is 3 days before the deadline to get in, to get through, and then I would get through, and then I'd get bumped out. So I mean, it's a good point. It should count.
Yeah, and definitely, we're gonna try to make it as you know, help you all and make it as easy as possible to get those hours. So, you know, we're gonna look into that for sure.
It was some of the most exciting time I've ever spent on a computer.
I'm sure.
I think we ought to consider public shaming for those
All right, a couple of more things under future upcoming activities. Well, before we go into that, just wanted to have a text Blanca, you want to talk about the TASA? This is really good news for us.
Yeah, get you off yourself. Good morning, board members. Blanca Serrano with Texas here in El Paso to get him off his soapbox. And to give you guys a really neat example of what happens when we do show up. Last year I was here before you guys announcing a call for projects for a statewide transportation alternative program. And this year I'm here with some good news. Last month the Transportation Commission awarded a total of 30 projects. It was 2 different pots of money this time around as far as the call goes. We had the leftover of the safety new money. It was just a little over $8 million on that pot, and a total of $15 million worth of the transportation alternative programs. We've been very good in our region at showing up to every one of these calls for projects for the past 3 calls to start in 2015. This year we were once again the 2nd largest nominations in the state, which, you know, proof, like he says, you show up, you're gonna get something. The commission awarded a total of 12 projects under the Safe Routes to School program. One of them was awarded to the city of El Paso. It's the 2nd largest project actually in the state. It's the Isleta Middle School Safe Routes to School program. It's a little over 900, actually it's almost $1 million, $999,953 were awarded in that one. Another 2 projects were awarded under the Transportation Alternatives spot, and those were with El Paso County. There was a Tornillo South Sidewalks, shared use path, and the Tornillo North Sidewalks project. Those 2 projects are really nice because they complement the Otis Smith Road project that was awarded in the last call for projects. Each one of those is slightly over $1 million, and it just goes to show that we are out there, we are being looked at, and people are really paying attention to every project that we submit. We submitted a total of 37 out of 397 nominations that were sent in statewide. And to be able to get 3 projects in our region shows really good how much we're really good and paying attention to what we're doing. This is great news for everybody, and I want to thank all of you guys for showing such great support of the projects when your staff comes and tells me we want to get this out there because it shows that it's working. And also ask you for your support. We'll be out here again in the next 2 months asking you for approval to get these projects submitted in the May STIP revision because we do need to get them on there so that we can get the projects out there and develop. We're trying to see if all of these projects can let in 2022. This is going to be difficult to do in 2021 because of the type of projects they are. But we'll be out here asking for your support, and thank you once again for showing that we do show up. Thank you.
Well, that's really good news. The final topic here that I wanted to mention is the Texas Mobility Summit. This is an activity, several conferences that are more geared towards technology that TxDOT has been putting together along with a different group. Last year it was I believe in November that several of us attended in San Antonio. But the really cool thing is that El Paso is now looking to host it for next year. And again, Yvette, I don't know if you want to, can I put you on the spot to talk a little bit about that? I mean, the city of El Paso has taken the lead along with UTEP, and you know, Yvette has done a really good job in promoting it. So
Good morning, Yvette Hernandez with the City of El Paso. You would think Blanca and I had planned this presentation to be the rebuttal for We Gotta Really Be Present. So this will be the 5th year that the Texas Mobility Summit is hosting a conference. It has been along the infamous 135, so you look, it's been at Austin, San Antonio, Houston, Arlington. So this is the first time we're bringing them out west. So far, the feedback that we've heard, everyone is really excited. It'll be the last week of September. So really want to have you guys save the date. We'll be asking for some of the delegation to speak and that we have a really great presence there. They were here on the 19th to host and to see the city. They were really, really excited about seeing cargo over to Juarez and the port. So we were able to show them Zaragoza, and also they were at PDN. So we're going to see if there's interest for some of the attendees to get a behind-the-scenes tour. In speaks with the Border Patrol, of course, but we're already working with them. So we have quite a few activities already planned. Really excited to bring them out west and to show them what El Paso has to offer and how we are at the forefront of transportation. So, also just wanted to say thank you to the county. We are required for seed money. They've already committed to some money, so I appreciate that, UTEP as well. And so we're going to be contacting donors and sponsors so that we have a really good showing and they see that El Paso hospitality. So, thank you.
I have a question, Yvette. So
Yes,
do you
ma'am.
have a specific weekend?
Yes,
The last September?
typically on Sundays is when the conferences begin, so it's Sunday the 27th. That's the demonstration day when we bring in scooters, AV, freight, they get to see that. And then Monday, Tuesday are when we host the training sessions.
Thank you for all your hard work.
All right, so that really is a great opportunity to showcase El Paso. So it's not only us going, but bringing people here. Last year, I believe there were about 320 participants. So it's a good sized number of participants. With that, Steve, do you want to mention anything else about next month? Next week? I'm sorry, next week.
Steve Ortega with the Chamber of Commerce Mobility Coalition. First, I want to thank all of you for your service. I want to take my hat off to Mr. Calvo and his staff. A lot of work did go into the RMS strategy, and so as of today, there's a path in which transportation in our region is moving forward. But I do want to underscore his request that we personally get involved in what's taking place in Austin. If you see the meetings, if you go to the meetings, you realize how much focus is placed on that I-35 corridor, not only verbally, but when you take a look at now Category 12, which was traditionally the discretionary funds, a good chunk of that is dedicated towards Clear Lanes initiatives. Clear Lanes initiatives applies to Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, and Houston. And so we know the transportation needs here in our community, and we have to share that with the rest of the state of Texas. And I'll underscore what the projections for USMCA do, and that's increase traffic in our community because of the expansiveness of trade, in particular provisions as it relates to auto manufacturing within USMCA. So we're going to see more auto manufacturing, hopefully, in our region, but that just, again, underscores the need to have a transportation network that's properly built out. I think we're moving in the right direction, but the more of you that can get involved as it relates to advocacy in Austin, it'll bode well for us. We don't have a transportation commissioner anymore advocating for El Paso, so that makes it incumbent upon us to personally get involved. And I know she's a relative, but I'll take my hat off to Representative Ortega. She's taken the lead on that issue, and we welcome more of you to get involved so that our region is done justice when it comes to transportation and quality of life. That's all I have to say. Thank you again for your service. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We're done. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff. Thank you, board members. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Motion. Second.
Later on now.
I
I know you did.